Dear guests and speakers, welcome to Indonesia Pavilion. I see some familiar faces. Thank you for being our loyal speaker. Thank you for your support. So today we're going to discuss on the forestry landscape management in optimizing forest land productivity. So based on that, today we will learn some initiatives and strategies in forestry landscape management to optimizing forest land productivity. We'll also hear some best practices from the experts here on the forestry landscape management, both local in Indonesia as well as from our international partner, the region. And of course, what's the role of international partnerships in forest management to mitigate the global environmental challenges? To commence the session, I'll just quickly invite our moderator. He's very, very familiar. He's the Deputy Chair for Environment and Forestry from the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Bapak Silverius Oscar Unggul. Please come on the stage.
Thank you, our famous MC, more famous than everybody here. Yeah, Mona, thank you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today we will discuss about forestry landscape management. And our speaker today is, I think, the proponent people to talk about this subject. And before that, I want to invite Ibu Anggia Ermarini, Vice Chair of Commission 4 of the House of Representatives of Republic Indonesia. Please, Bu, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the moderator and also the famous MC. The most famous, where is Mbak Donna? Distinguished delegates of COP28 and guests of the Indonesian Pavilion COP28 Dubai, speakers and moderators, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to welcome distinguished delegates, speakers, and participants to Indonesia Pavilion. In this session, Indonesia Pavilion is hosting a talk show with the topic of forestry partnership to support forestry landscape management in optimizing forest land productivity. This talk show aims to share Indonesia initiative and strategy in forestry landscape management to optimizing forest and land productivity, exchange information and best practices on forestry landscape management from other regions, encourage dialogue and exchange of ideas between experts, stakeholders, and the general public regarding sustainable forest landscape management strategies, create a networking for future development of forestry landscape management. Ladies and gentlemen, with the presence of the speakers from the US, from the Germany, and other two speakers from the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry, I believe that this will enrich the discussion in forestry landscape management and related issues. The Commission 4 of the House of Representatives of the Government of Indonesia support the cooperation in forestry sectors and provides recommendation on how to amplify the benefit from the cooperation, especially forestry landscape management and related issues, cover a broad range of multi-stakeholders and beneficiaries. I would also like to emphasize that in Indonesia, after the issuance of Law Number 6/2023 concerning job creation and its implementation regulations, forest utilization activity is protected and production forests are carried out by two schemes, namely Forest Utilization Business Permit, Perizinan Berusaha Pemanfaatan Hutan, dan Social Forestry Management Schemes. These two schemes are implemented through multi-forestry businesses as formed as landscape-based forest management. Forest utilization through forestry multi-businesses is a new paradigm of forest utilization in Indonesia, which changed the implementation of forest utilization from primarily forest utilization for timber forest product to forest utilization for optimizing forest areas by integrating areas utilization, environmental services, timber forest product, and non-timber forest product. Forest landscape management is important for supporting climate change mitigation and adaptation, while enhancing ecological and livelihood values. Forest landscape management is about optimizing forest land productivity and ensure its long-term and sustainable use. One key issue in forest landscape management is cooperation or partnership. Forestry partnership is crucial to support the implementation of forest in landscape management and to mitigate global environmental challenges. Working collaboratively cannot avoid is needed towards sustainable forest landscape management. This is especially true for mobilizing resources, funding, exchanging information and knowledge, as well as advancing adaptation and mitigation. We do hope that Indonesia's effort in improving and maintaining sustainable forest landscape management in optimizing forest land productivity with example and lessons learned from the US and Germany, at least we can open a window of opportunity for future partnership in forestry sector. I wish you all a very fruitful and successful deliberation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Terima kasih. Selamat sore. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Bu Anggia, for your speech. And ladies and gentlemen, like I mentioned before, today forestry landscape management with 4 speakers. 3 of them is here and 1 online. Let me introduce our distinguished speaker for all of us. First, Bapak Erwan Sudaryanto. Pak Erwan Sudaryanto is an experienced forester for 29 years, been joining the Indonesian Minister of Environment and Forestry, starting from junior staff, head of section of forest planning utilization, head of extension office regional East Kalimantan, and the latest as a director of forest utilization business at Directorate General of Sustainable Forest Management. The Indonesian Minister of Environment and Forestry, Pak Erwan Sudaryanto, holds forestry degrees from Bogor Agriculture University and Master of Management. Same with me ya, Ibu Bella ya. The second, Bapak Hairi Wenda. Please Pak. Bapak Hairi Wenda is a senior officer at the Director General of Sustainable Forest Management. He has been working as forester for 26 years, starting as a junior staff at Regional Forestry Service Office. He joined the minister in 2000. Currently, Bapak Hairi Wenda is appointed as a Director of Forest Utilization Business Control at Director General of Sustainable Forest Management, the Indonesian Minister of Environment and Forestry. Bapak Hairil Wenda holds a forestry degrees from the Bogor Agriculture University and Master of Public Administration. The third one. The third, Ibu Barbara. Please, Bu. Ibu Barbara joined KfW Development Bank in 1994 as analysis and project. She promoted as a head of division in 2006, as a director, process and instrument department in 2017. The latest as director, sector policy department. She holds a Master of Business Administration and General Management Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University. Welcome, Bu Barbara. And the gentleman who joined with us online, Bapak Dr. Hugh Salford. Hello, Pak Hugh. Can you hear us? Where are you now, Pak? In Jakarta or in DC or not here?
I'm sitting in a hotel at the Dubai Marina.
Where? Mindanao.
I'm in the
Okay.
Dubai Marina in my hotel.
Okay, Pak Hugh. Pak Dr. Hugh Salford was a regional ecologist for the USDA Forest Service Regional 5 for California, Hawaii, Pacific Territories. For more than 2 decades, he retired at the end of the 2021. He is a research ecologist in the Department of Environment Science and Policy at the University of California, Davis, and also chief scientist of Vibrant Planet and Environment Public Benefit Cooperation, focused on forestry resilience and wildlife risk reduction. This is Pak Hughes. Okay, now we will give our speakers to stay in the mimbar. Mimbar apa bahasa Inggrisnya? Stage. Kalau sore sudah mulai lupa-lupa bahasa Inggris. Sometimes lupa-lupa, but no problem. I want to please Pak Erwan to take your presentation. Please, Pak.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Erwan, Director of Forest Utilization Business at Indonesian Ministry of Environmental and Forestry. Talking about green investment and forestry business in imperative. Today, I would like to share forestry multi-businesses as a transformation of green investment. The Constitution of the Republic of Indonesia mandated that all natural resources be controlled by the state and used as much as possible for the prosperity of the people. To manage Indonesian vast forest management activities must implement green economic policies that balance economic value of forestry, business and use environmental services while maintaining forest sustainability and environmental quality as well as ecosystem balance to achieve sustainable development. Implementing of green economy began when planning forest use. Forest utilization carried off through social forestry agreement and businesses permit of forest utilization through forestry multi-business. Forest utilization planning refers to spatial information based on forestry thematic maps to ensure area certainly. Business certainly, conflict resolution, optimization of space and forest product. Social forestry refer to indicative map of social forestry areas where businesses license refer to forest utilization direction map for forest utilization business permit. The preparation of the indicative forest utilization map consider 1. Condition of forest land cover. 2. Extensions of society. 3. Potential for timber forest and anti-FB product. 4. Potential environmental services. Topography and accessibility, not the permanent moratorium area for the new concession in peatland and primary forest. In the context of green economic, forestry multi-businesses is believed to be able to maintain land cover as well as increase the economic value of the forest. Increase forest productivity and diversity forest product. The activities include area in utilization, environmental service utilization, timber and non-timber forest product utilization, as well as timber and non-timber forest product collection. Forestry multi-businesses is a paradigm shift in forest management from timber-oriented to landscape management. Implementing forestry multi-businesses is part of the national climate change mitigation agenda because it can control the rate of plant deforestation and forestry concession area. We believe that this new paradigm will become an entry strategy for green investment development. Together with member states of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Indonesia has agreed to jointly achieve the global goal to limiting average rise in global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrialization level and continue to strive to limit temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We state in the National Determined Contribution (NDC) document which containing a commitment of the GHG emission reduction target of 29% for counter measurement one on unconventional NDC and up to 41% to counter measurement to or conditional NDC compared to business as usual by 2030. Furthermore, before the UNFCCC COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh activity, Indonesia launched the enhanced NDC, and the government of Indonesia committed to reducing GHG emission by 31.89% against the business as usual scenario through its own effort or unconditional, and 43.2% with necessary international assistance conditional by 2030 to reduce climate change-related risks. Indonesian NDC cover the 5 sectors: energy, industrial process and product use, waste, forest and other land use change, and agriculture. As the largest contributing sector is achieving the NDC target, around 60% of the Indonesian forestry sector consistently promotes the value netting agenda. It will continue the move forward with the benefit that have been felt in the last 2 years. Among others, the significant reduction of GHG emission of up to 43% to 47%. Indonesian value netting 2030 aim to reduce carbon emission. increase carbon absorption and sustain carbon sequestration through the variety of plant activities, including reducing emission from deforestation and degradation, as well as forest and land use control. Development as plantation forests, sustainable forest management, forest rehabilitation including mangrove, peatland management, conservation forest management. Of course, it is not easy to build, formulate, and implement the forestry sector net zero emission ambition for 2030. Implementing forestry multi-business is part of the national climate change mitigation agenda. Forestry business is believed to be able to maintain the land cover as well as increase the economic value of forests, increase the forest production, productivity and diversity forest product. The activities include area utilization, environmental services utilization, timber and non-timber forest product utilization, and as well as timber and non-timber forest product collection. Forestry multi-business is Indonesia Volume Netting 2030. Operational plan contribute to achieving the prevention of deforestation, prevention of degradation, and sustainable forest management technique. The implementation, the forest management technique in the field has implemented technology. Reduce impact logging carbon, real estate, and intensive silviculture technology, silane, are technological instruments for increasing the regeneration of secondary natural forests. The application of silane as an effort to increase carbon reservoir through enrichment can increase natural forest productivity up to 3 or 4 times the current productivity. Success in moving toward net zero emission is largely determined by international commitment to achieving the Paris Agreement target as part of global effort. One of the articles, the Paris Agreement, emphasizing the important role of development countries in providing financial support for developing countries. Indonesian Volume Netting 2030 attracted international attention and support. There has been a bilateral agreement between Indonesia and the government of the United States, United Kingdom, and Norway to support Indonesia Volume Netting 2030. Multi-businesses forestry as an entry strategy for green investment development is one of the activities facilitated in the cooperation agenda for Indonesia Volume Netting 2030 achievement. The concept, the green investment, refer to investment activities that pay attention to environmental, social, and governance aspects. Green investment applies the principle of not only being oriented toward gaining profit or financial return, but also producing sustainable social and environmental impact. Positively impacting to that green investment will provide community welfare as well as have a positive impact on the environment in the sustainable manner. The Indonesian government commitment to presenting the environment in the context of controlling climate change in also supporting by other stakeholders. The Financial Services Authority has prepared the Indonesian Green Taxonomy document. Edition 1 in the effort to accelerate the implementation of sustainable finance. It's the hope that the green taxonomy can encourage innovation in the creation of green project initiative and according with government threshold standard which refer to the obligation of holder of Forest Utilization Business Permit, and the norm of Sustainable Forest Management Certificate. The first edition of the Indonesian Green Taxonomy is living document and applies to open continuous improvement approach, including if there are additional of reduction to economic sector that meet green criteria, change to standard and policies, including scientific development and technological advantage. One of the activities in the multi-forestry businesses is use environmental services for carbon absorption and or carbon storage, climate change mitigation action in the sector of forestry in order achieving the NDC target can be done through carbon trade. Implementation the economic value of forest carbon and forest utilization business permit work area to support the implementation of Indonesian forestry and other land use net sink 2030 guidance by Indonesian regulation. Distinguished participants and ladies and gentlemen, forestry multi-business as a transformation green investment applies the basic principle of Indonesian forest management, economically feasibility, sociality, acceptable, and ecological sustainability. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Erwan. Pak Erwan mentioned about the principle of Indonesian forest management, yeah, and how multi-usaha kehutanan is an opportunity. Yeah. Pak Erwan is Director of Forest Utilization Business, and now Pak Hairi Wenda, after there are business mentioned by Pak Erwan, now business, but how to control the business. So this is Pak Hairi Wenda, Director of Forest Utilization Business Control. Please, Pak Wenda, the stage is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear Honorable Mrs. Dr. Anggia Ermarini, Vice Chair of Commission 4 of the House of Representatives, Mr. Dr. Alu Dohong, Vice Minister of Ministry of Environment and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Dr. Agus Justianto, Director General of Sustainable Forest Management, Ministry of Environmental and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia, the honorable speakers and moderators, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Vice Minister of Environment and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia and to everyone involved for organizing this event today. I am pleased to be here today to meet you all the talk show on forestry partnership to support forestry landscape management in optimizing forest land productivity. My name is Hairi Wenda, Director of Forest Utilization Business Control. Ladies and gentlemen, today I will be presenting the forestry multi-business, a new paradigm in and sustainability managed forests. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, Indonesia has a very extensive forest resources amounted to 125.92 million hectares forest area, which is accounted for 64% of the country's total area. To carry out the mandate of the 1945 Constitution of the Republic of Indonesia, the earth, water, and natural resources contained therein are controlled by the state to be used as much as possible for the well-being of the people. Forest and environmental management must be able to support its sustainability function for as long as possible. This extraordinary mandate attaches to all management actors from the central level to the community at the site level. The Indonesian laws and regulation has ruled that forest areas are managed according to their function: production forests, conservation forests, and protection forests. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, in the environment and forestry sector, long-term development plan of the years 2020 22 to 2024 notably seeks to strengthen the environment and improve resilience against natural disasters and climate change, which translated into 4 development agendas that also serves as national priorities in the state in strategic plan year to 2022 to 2024 of Ministry Environment Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia. There are 4 national priority. One, priority strengthening economic resilience for quality and equitable growth. Second, developing regions to reduce inequality and to ensure equality. Third, improving the quality and competitiveness of human resources. Fourth, improving the information and increasing disaster and climate resilience. 3 main indicators of forestry development in 2020 to 2024. Establishing in protecting 65 million hectares of national protected areas, providing access to the community of 10 million hectares, fulfill the minimum national wood production supply to 60 million cubic meter per year. Ladies and gentlemen, the implementation of sustainable forest management encourages the achievement of sustainable development goals in the areas as presented in the chart by giving access to social forestry and the development of independent forest farmer groups, agroforestry, forest area utilization, and releasing for lands as object of agrarian reform. Green School, Forestry Vocational High School, integration of gender issues and improve access of women in every activity in Ministry of Environment and Forestry until this site level. Creating jobs in production forest business, forest products industries, wild flora and fauna breeding, and also ecotourism, and many more. Next, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Many aspects of forestry and environmental development in Indonesia have been under adjustment over the last decade. Some successful corrective policy steps had been taken to protect Indonesia forests and the environment, so it can always provide maximum benefits for the people while maintaining its sustainability. Some of these corrective actions are ensuring a significant reduction in the rate of deforestation and degradation, preventing the occurrence of forest and land fires, and mitigate its negative impact on environment and social economy of the community, taking into account the biographic principles in utilization and use forest areas, that is, environmental capacity and carrying capacity in the utilization of areas, watershed characteristic, and biodiversity, encouraging and prioritizing community participation in forest and environmental management by giving responsibility to the parties involved in it, so that forest areas and their ecosystem will be well maintained. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the reconfiguration and reorientation of forest management in Indonesia had been established to promote a better forest management by creating a landscape sustainable forest management that is socially acceptable, ecologically sensible, and economically feasible based on environmental approval. This is done through a change in the focus of forest management from wood management toward landscape management. This is done through the scheme of social forest management approval and forest utilization business license. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the Directorate General of Sustainable Forest Management, Ministry of Environment and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia has established 5 forest management pillars, namely, first, certainty of areas that is recognized by all parties. Second, guarantees in running the forestry business. Third, increasing forest productivity, building innovation to diversify forestry product, and increasing the competitiveness of forestry product by means of innovation and technology. The implementation of forest utilization through multi-business forestry needs to be accelerated in order to optimize. First, increase forest productivity to meet the demand of both export and domestic market. Second, increase non-tax revenue from forest product. Strengthen business and environmental resilience through diversification of forest product as a mitigation and adaptation of climate change. Also, creates more jobs for people, especially those living next to the forest areas. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the corrective policy steps, together with forest management reconfiguration, pave the way for a successful forest management, which has resulted in serious achievement toward landscape forest management. Some of them are: first, the decline in deforestation; second, forest and land fire management; three, peat management through the moratorium on the utilization of peatlands, water management regulation, and implementation of canal blocking and the site level. Four, granting the access rights of forest to community through social forestry. High conservation value in oil palm plantation, new permit moratorium. And effective implementation of the timber legality assurance system. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the difference between forest management before and after law on job creation number 10 of the year 2020, before there are timber oriented, single permit for per activity, and land use is less optimal, low forest land value. After there are beyond timber, social forestry and multi-business, forest utilization, business permit for multi-business, and land use is more optimal, higher forest land value. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we may still have one simple question as to why a forestry multi-business is needed, especially in Indonesia forests, which consider still have a vast amount of wood potential. The multi-business scheme is considered capable of: first, increasing the real economic value of forest land, which is currently still low. Second, increasing the percentage of effective forest area, which is still low. Increasing market activity for wood originating from natural forests, which currently tends to decline. Fourth, as an alternative source of non-tax revenue other than wood forest products, as an effort to optimize the forest space for forest utilization, and is able to bring upstream and downstream forestry business closer together. And multi-business forestry scheme also has an impact on protecting natural forests from deforestation, sustainable forest management, increasing carbon stock, managing peat ecosystem, controlling fires, and conserving biodiversity. Last, there are still a range of opportunities for the development of sustainable forest management practices in Indonesia. Some of these opportunities including: one, first, forestry multi-business must produce the first product derived from utilization of timber forest product, non-timber forest product, and environmental services. Second, improving coordination of all stakeholders to support the development of new business configuration, which ensure upstream, downstream, and market strength. Third, reorganizing carbon storage and sequestration activities as one of the multi-business forestry activities that play an important role in supporting climate change mitigation and adaptation to achieve national determined contribution target in the forestry sector. Fourth, socializing the job creation law and its regulation implementation for sector outside of forestry, like agriculture, statistic, industry and trade, finance, etc., and many more. I believe that to be able to answer challenge in the forestry and environmental sectors, we all need to be adaptive, innovative, productive, and creative in finding breakthrough to overcome various challenges in our efforts for better environmental and forestry management. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Wenda. I mentioned about one good quote here, need collaboration with the new business configuration. New business configuration and need collaboration. Okay, now we will invite Pak Hugh to deliver his presentation. Pak Hugh online, please Pak, the stage is you. Pak Hugh, still online?
Online, and can you hear me?
Oh yeah, okay. Please Pak, waiting for you.
Great. I'll wait for the first slide to come up. Thank you. Well, while I'm waiting for my slide to come up, I'll just say thank you and salamat siang. I'm sorry I'm presenting virtually. I was only able to procure a credential for the second half of the COP. So I'm actually presenting to you from the room of my hotel in the Dubai Marina, just a few kilometers away from the Expo City. So can I check with you? Can you all hear me okay? Can someone give me a thumbs up if it's working? Okay, fantastic. Okay. I need to begin by noting that I am representing the U.S. Forest Service in this session, but I no longer work directly as a Forest Service employee. I retired a few years ago, but rather as a contractor to the Forest Service's International Programs Office. So my comment should not be interpreted as representing U.S. government policy or opinion. Next slide, please. I will be discussing Forest Service engagement and sustainable multiple use management, but I'd like to begin with a quote from the first Forest Service chief, Gifford Pinchot, from 1905. Even though the Forest Service in those days was principally focused on forests as a commodity, there was a recognition then that long-term sustainability and balancing competing interests were key overarching goals. Pinchot wrote, "Where conflicting interests must be reconciled, the question shall always be answered from the standpoint of the greatest good of the greatest number in the long run." The concept of the greatest good has always been a central tenet of the U.S. Forest Service and was even the name of a recent documentary about the Forest Service and its environmental management history. Next slide, please. Sorry for all the words on this slide. Congressional legislation pertaining to the Forest Service begins in 1897 with the Organic Act, but the most influential laws for Forest Service business were enacted in the 1960s and the 1970s as environmental degradation and worries about sustainability began to concern the nation. The Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act of 1960 was a reaction to the heavily timber-centric focus of the Forest Service in the years after the Second World War. And the act codified 4 other uses: grazing, watershed protection, recreation, and fish and wildlife habitat, as being important to consider as well. The 1964 Wilderness Act gave the U.S. Congress the ability to permanently designate so-called wilderness areas that the Forest Service and other agencies would manage for scenic, recreational, and conservation purposes, and also protect from logging. In the early 1970s, the National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Act, which I didn't list on the slide, there's no room, also helped to better define the Forest Service's commitment to sustainability and multiple use management. And then finally, on the slide, the 1976 National Forest Management Act required the Forest Service to publish formal land and resource management plans every 15 years or so. These were developed in close collaboration with the public. Sustainable timber harvest was better defined in the Act. Planning processes were required to incorporate so-called interdisciplinary teams that included environmental specialists and not just foresters. And the agency was required to consider the long-term viability of plant and animal populations as well. Next slide, please. The Forest Service has a long list of regulations, standards, and guidelines, like every agency has, that pertain to sustainability and multiple use. But the most important is probably the planning rule, which operationalizes the National Forest Management Act. Under the most recent planning rule, which was published in 2012, the Forest Service commits to promoting ecological and social and economic sustainability. It commits to protecting and enhancing water resources, to restoring degraded ecosystems, to supporting the diversity of plant and animal populations, to providing key ecosystem services, and also properly balancing the various ways in which the public uses the national forest lands. It commits to interacting with the public and courting their opinions in transparent ways, and also to using the best available scientific information and making management decisions. Those are a lot of commitments. Each of these categories is further backed up by a set of internal Forest Service directives that explain to Forest Service staff how to meet these requirements. Next slide, please. In sum, the Forest Service must seek to balance the competing values of the public, and in seeking that balance, it must consider long-term sustainability as well. Best practices set out in the legislation and also in the planning rule require transparency in procedures, the use of objective and legitimate science, regular consultation with the public, and a process for resolving conflicts if they occur. And one of the things I'd like to note is that in the US, very few resource management decisions are made without some level of controversy, particularly in California. And in highly contentious cases, the judicial system may be required to resolve the conflict. Where such conflicts have really important political, social, environmental, or say ecological ramifications, the US Congress and or the executive branch may also decide that new legislation or executive orders are necessary. And this has happened on numerous occasions, but good examples include logging versus conservation of temperate forests in Alaska, logging versus spotted owls and old growth in Washington, Oregon, and California, and river dams versus fish populations in the western and southeastern US. Next slide, please. So I'm going to finish with an example of a multiple use management success story from an important watershed in California, the watershed of the North Yuba River. Next slide, please. The Yuba River drains a moderately sized watershed northeast of Sacramento, the California capital. About 50% of the watershed is managed by the Tahoe National Forest of the US Forest Service. About 100,000 people live in the watershed, but millions of people benefit from ecosystem services provided by the watershed, most prominently water resources and also tourism and recreational services. Importantly, the Yuba River watershed is the only Sierra Nevada River watershed that has not experienced a huge and destructive wildfire in recent decades. Next slide, please. The Yuba River is a major provider of water for agriculture in the California Central Valley, which is also the most important agricultural area in the United States. The watershed is very important for biodiversity. It supports rapidly declining populations of salmon and steelhead, these are fish, as well as important refuges for the California spotted owl. Recreation use is really high. Recreation and tourism are major economic activities, and they support many of the towns in the watershed. The area was heavily impacted by mining in the 19th century and by extensive and intensive logging in the 19th and 20th centuries. Flooding is a major threat throughout the watershed, and an extensive network of dams controls flooding and water flow as well. Next slide, please. My case study focuses on the North Yuba River watershed, which is a little more than a third of the entire Yuba River watershed. This Forest Service map highlights another one of the important features of the watershed, which is the highly fragmented nature of ownership of land. On much of the landscape, square miles alternately belong to the Forest Service, the green areas, or to private owners, the white areas. This checkerboard pattern is a vestige of 19th century land disbursement policies of the federal government as it sought to settle Western lands, and it's a major challenge to Forest Service management. And I must say, it's also typical to quite a few forests in the Western US. Next slide, please. Here are some of the key threats and challenges facing the Forest Service and its partners in the North Yuba watershed. The landscape is highly fragmented, both with respect to ownership patterns, as I just showed, but also with respect to environmental conditions. Mercury and related toxins are at high levels in parts of the landscape due to gold mining, and severe flooding reactivates and redistributes these toxins. Forest in the watershed lost most of its large and fire-tolerant trees to logging, and fire exclusion has resulted in a very dense and very homogeneous forest dominated by small trees from fire-sensitive species. Risk of severe wildfire is very high, and it's growing every year. After loss of most of the valuable trees and the decline of the timber industry in the 1980s and the 1990s, most of the forestry-related jobs were lost in the watershed, and all of the sawmills in the watershed closed. Finally, people moving to the watershed from urban areas who have actually, ironically, often built in places of very high fire risk, are much less likely to understand the role that active forest management can play in reducing wildfire risk, flooding risk, and in restoring wildlife habitat, and also in creating rural jobs. Next slide, please. Thanks. As in much of the world, current and projected future trends in climate and wildfire are greatly increasing the risk of environmental catastrophe in the North Yuba watershed. Temperatures are expected to rise by up to 5 degrees by the end of the century. Winter snowpack, which is the main source of water in California, is dropping quickly, and large and severe wildfires are occurring with more and more regularity. Thus far, as I noted, the North Yuba watershed has been spared from the huge and destructive wildfires that have scarred much of the Sierra Nevada, but it is only a matter of time before we see this kind of fire in the watershed. Next slide. In democracies, solving complex environmental problems and complex landscapes with many stakeholders requires a highly collaborative process, which is generally very difficult, very costly, and often very time intensive. I've listed some of the complications here, and I won't elaborate on them, but I'll just note that some of the important ones include making sure the important organizations and diverse opinions are represented, making sure that you can attract and reward investment in the project, ensuring transparency of the project and its purposes, and developing a robust prioritization process that properly balances the priorities of the key stakeholders. Sorry. Next slide, please. The North Yuba Forest Partnership is focused on a set of goals that are common to most watershed collaboratives in the Western US, namely to improve forest health and resilience, reduce forest risk, ensure provision of key ecosystem services, with water often being at the top of the list, and rejuvenate the local economy by linking jobs to forest health. But the North Yuba Forest Partnership was more proactive than most collaboratives, and also more egalitarian, with inclusion right from the beginning of all of the key stakeholders in the watershed, including, and they're all listed here on this slide, local citizens groups and local government, a Native American tribe, a major international conservation organization, the major provider of water and hydropower in the watershed, the Forest Service and the National Forest Foundation, which are, of course, national organizations, and also 2 startup businesses with new and promising ways of financing and planning the forest management work. Next slide. These 2 startups are Blue Forest Conservation and Vibrant Planet, and I've included the websites for both organizations. And for full disclosure, I should note that I am the chief scientist of Vibrant Planet, so it's a little bit of propaganda here. Blue Forest Conservation invented the so-called Forest Resilience Bond, which links private investors to forest health and restoration projects by ensuring reasonable returns on investment from the beneficiaries of the project. And in the case of the North Yuba Forest Partnership, the chief paying beneficiaries were, number 1, the Yuba Water Agency, which expected to see better water quality, less debris and sediment in their reservoirs, and less fire damage to their hydroelectric and electricity transmission infrastructure. And number two, the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, which sought reduced fire risk, reduced fire suppression costs, and more stable carbon stocks. Since their involvement in the North Yuba Forest Partnership, Blue Forest has gone on to finance other watershed improvement projects in California and elsewhere. Vibrant Planet contributed the Land Tender Decision Support Tool, which considers fire and drought risk as well as ecological impacts of potential forest management actions, and permits project stakeholders to build scenarios of forest management activities based on their mix of priorities, which can include things like fire safety, asset protection, biodiversity, carbon, water, economic outcomes, and so on. The scenarios are optimized based on the calculated return on investment, and the results include recommended forest management actions and their locations and timing, costs and economic outputs, and positive and negative impacts on a set of ecosystem services, which include above ground carbon and are now being expanded to include water outputs and biodiversity as well. Since the North Yuba Forest Partnership project, land tender has been adopted by the Forest Service to plan wildfire risk mitigation on many of its wildfire crisis landscapes across the Western US. Next slide. The North Yuba Forest Partnership is one of the best US examples of a successful collaborative effort to reduce wildfire risk, promote resource sustainability, and balance multiple uses of forest lands. Planning the project and securing funding took only 4 years to complete, less than half the time of comparable projects in similar watersheds elsewhere in the Western US. In addition, the inclusiveness and transparency of the collaborative process resulted in little controversy, and the project was not litigated by environmental groups or industry, which is a rarity for projects of this size in the Western US. The environmental analysis was completed in early 2023, and the record of decision was signed just this past July. Forest management activities are now underway. And because of the North Yuba Forest Partnership's record of success, the US Forest Service has since decided to allocate a further $160 million for wildfire risk reduction and forest management in the watershed. At the same time, due to rebuilding needs in neighboring watersheds that were affected by destructive fires, but also to the promise of a rejuvenated forest products stream, 2 new sawmills have opened in the region, and these are the first new sawmills built in California in decades. These have created new jobs and will greatly reduce the cost of wildfire risk reduction and sustainable forest management in the central Sierra Nevada. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Pak Huge. Great, yeah? Maybe next we will discuss in Yuba, North Forest River nih. Good for exchange, experience, I think. Okay, the last speaker, but not least, Ibu Barbara, please. Here, Bu.
So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation to this very great panel of experts on forest restoration. And you know, now I'm bringing in the international perspective, international collaboration. I'm representing KfW Development Bank. We are one of the largest bilateral financiers of development worldwide on behalf of the German government. All we do is actually German cooperation with our partner countries abroad. And with Indonesia, we have a long-standing collaboration since 1952, so 71 years of collaboration on various aspects. And today, our partnership really focuses on common objectives, such as, we have heard a lot about them, the environmental protection, a call for climate action, but at the same time, sustainable development for Indonesia as a country. And KfW currently implements, on behalf of the German government, a portfolio of 181 million in grant funding committed to green and blue projects. And we have various approaches doing that. And in all of these approaches, we really focus on involving the government of Indonesia. There is a very strong alignment with the strategy you have, and we heard about this strategy, the Folu Net Sink 2030 strategy, which you now pursue. But we also always try in our projects to involve the people living in those regions, because you cannot preserve biodiversity, you cannot go for climate action without offering a perspective to the people who live in these areas you're working in. And we have, apart from our close collaboration with the Indian government, we also have very successful funding funds, global funds, where we not only use public funding, but also philanthropic funding in order to support either landscapes, entire landscapes with a legacy landscapes fund, or maritime protection areas with the Blue Action Funds. And both of these funds actually have in common that that the funds issue calls for proposals, and partners, including NGOs, can apply for funding and directly work with the local communities in order to implement measures in those protection areas. And the funding is long-term, and it supports the management of these protection areas, because sometimes we have the so-called paper parks. They are only parks which are on the map, but they don't have the funds to be really effectively managed. And these big funds, using philanthropic capital, they help in the long-term sustainability of these protection areas, and that helps them a lot. They have a long-term planning perspective. But now I would like to illustrate two examples which have this social component, which you also highlighted a lot, apart from the multi-business component, which offers various opportunities for the local population to earn revenues, but also the social component, making sure that everyone is involved. So since 2016, KfW has been supporting the government of Indonesia to implement the policy commitment which was issued in 2016 to actually designate 10% of the national state forest area to indigenous and local communities. And our social forestry approach helped in that, helped in preserving 263,000 hectares, which is only a fraction of the overall area, but it is definitely a good example for that. And we have supported Indonesia in numerous ways, not least by facilitating local communities to identify and prepare so-called village forest licenses, and to establish village forests. So there are 83 of them now during the first phases of the program, but there are more to come. And an additional area protected with the additional funding which is now provided. And almost all of the target villages confirmed that their socio-economic situation has really significantly improved through these actions, and also the deforestation rate has really significantly improved. And that is a good sign that, first of all, you have the ecological impact you're hoping for, but that the people themselves are also satisfied with it. And the second project example I would like to illustrate is community-based sustainable forest management and biodiversity conservation through the so-called RED+ initiative, so reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. So in various of these KfW-funded projects, there are community conservation agreements signed, and they are used to pay a grant annually. And these grants are intended to support activities such as reforestation, but also agroforestry. And agroforestry, this is the non-timber production of goods, which also are the basis for revenue generation in these areas. And also there, between 2016 and 18, there was a significant decrease in forest loss, for instance, in the Sinkil Peat Swamp Nature Reserve, and also in other 12 pilot areas which we support. And in 27 other project villages funded, also the deforestation rate significantly went down. So I think this really illustrates that these projects are very promising in terms of results. And I would like to close by really congratulating the Indonesian government for taking this approach, because Indonesia has really succeeded in dramatically decreasing deforestation rates overall, and that's an example for many, many other countries which have a very similar challenge. And it's a great gift you give, because you foster, you hold so much of biodiversity, which is so important globally, and also a large share of tropical forests overall. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu Barbara. We have 5 more times. If there is something to question, Ibu Bella, please. Ladies. Sorry.
Thank you, Pak Moderator. I have one question actually to Barbara. Hi, Barbara. Isabella here. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us the fundings made available by the German government. So my question is, so what are the eligibility criteria for the landscape project funds, and also the KPIs, for the measurement for such? Thank you so much. And probably, if I may, also for Hugh. Hi, Hugh. This is Isabella. Thank you so much for sharing with us the example of North Yuba project. However, could you also elaborate on the how do you actually engage community involvement in the U.S. with regard to the forest use or multi-use forest business in the U.S.? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ibu Bella. Please, Ibu Barbara.
When I presented, thank you for the question. When I presented the project examples, I said a couple of times that we really closely observe the development of the deforestation rate. So we compare that with other areas, and we have we have access to geodata supporting our expectations when the project is being implemented. So that's one thing. But then on the other hand, also certain KPIs are regarding the social well-being of the population which lives in those regions. It's the combination of these social as well as ecological KPIs which are very crucial. And carbon sequestration is another potential KPI, which we want to introduce more and more, because that's also for climate action. Of course, that's a very crucial element. But so far, other KPIs have been our priority, especially also when it comes to mangrove protection. We work a lot in Indonesia on mangroves as well.
Thank you, Ibu Barbara. And Pak Hugh? Pak Hugh? Pak Hugh, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry because of the limit of the time. Maybe now we still have, Pak Hugh, sorry. Please, Pak, please. Because
here.
after that, Pak, closing remarks for Director General. Please, Pak Hugh.
Thanks so much. So thank you for the question. It's a great question. And what I found, I work in a lot of countries internationally, and one of the main things that one has to develop is a general environmental ethic and concern within the population such that people stay attentive to actions of the federal and state governments. I can't speak for Indonesian law, I don't know exactly how it works. But in the United States, an agency like the Forest Service has a specific number of proscribed steps it must go through in order to gather public input and collaborate with the public. And that includes publishing notice of all planned forest actions in the Federal Register, publishing that also in all local newspapers, and reaching out to all of the organizations which have registered as concerned organizations and individuals. And so when that happens, then there are certain processes in the environmental analysis, the steps that we have to go through for environmental analysis that require us to work hand in hand with the public. The big thing to understand, and I'm sure you know this, is that once you engage in very high levels of collaboration, it will slow everything down a lot. It will raise the cost a lot as well. And in the US, individuals and organizations have many opportunities in the process to stop or slow the process or to even litigate the process. I think it's probably a lot more than most nations have, and it can make a lot of this stuff very, very long. Anyway, I'll just say that those are some of the examples of how we make sure and maintain contact with the public.
Thank you, Pak Hugh. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Pak Dr. Agusius for closing remarks.
Yes. Honorable Vice Chairman of the Commission 4 of the House of Representative of the Republic of Indonesia, Ibu Anggia, and also Ibu Alin. Honorable speakers and moderator, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good afternoon. We have to come to the end of this session, and I believe the presentation and discussion are fruitful and enrich our understanding, especially on the forestry partnership to support forestry landscape management in optimizing forest land productivity. We have discussed the main objective of the international partnership on forestry landscape management strategy to optimizing forest land productivity, the opportunities, major constraints, alternative solutions, and of course its future directions. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, international partnerships bring together governments, non-governmental organizations, international bodies, and various stakeholders to collaborate in developing and implementing effective strategies for sustainable forest management. The main aspect of international partnerships, namely common goals, multi-stakeholder involvement, policy development, financial support, knowledge exchange, global agreement, and community empowerment. Networking, access to information and exchange are some of the key success of the implementation of the sustainable forest landscape management. In Indonesia, the multi-forestry business concept includes forest area utilization, timber and non-timber forest product utilization, and environmental service utilization to get major advantages, particularly in the protection and production of forests. It becomes an entry strategy to achieve optimum forest resource utilization and green investment development, which also significantly increases the economic value of forests, increase forest cover, improve forest productivity and forest product export, and escalates job opportunities. The strategy is reorientation of forest management paradigm from timber-based management to sustainable forest landscape-based management and community-based approaches. It is also implemented to support climate change mitigation as well as to achieve the Indonesia forestry and other land use of Volu Net Sink 2030. Indonesia has signed MOUs with the US, Norway, and the UK to formalize bilateral partnership to support and accelerate the implementation of Indonesia Volume Nesting 2030 operational plan as part of the Indonesia's collective climate efforts. Indonesia is open and welcomes any potential technical collaboration in achieving sustainable forest management and climate goals. Thank you for speakers, moderators, and participants for participation and contribution in the session. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Director General. And this is the end of our session. I'm so sorry for the limited time. I cannot give many questions to the audience.